All right, let's talk about what is truly a milestone in psychiatric care. The FDA has recently cleared transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS, for adolescent depression. Now, this is a huge deal because it gives us a new, non-medication-based treatment for a condition that can be incredibly challenging to manage. So, let's get right into it.
To really get a handle on this, we're going to break it down into 5 key parts. First, we'll look at the challenges we face with current treatments. Then, we'll explore how TMS actually works on the brain. After that, and this is the real core of it, we'll dive deep into the clinical data. We'll also tackle the really practical questions of safety and access. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with the key takeaways and a look to the future.
So, to really appreciate why this new clearance is so important, we have to start by understanding the landscape we're working in right now. Basically, the limitations of the therapies we already have for adolescent depression.
And this slide really says it all. It shows what we call a clinical gap. You know, our standard medications like fluoxetine and escitalopram, they only show response rates of about 60 to 64%, and even fewer patients get to full remission. But what's even more concerning is that they carry a serious FDA boxed warning, the strongest kind, for an increased risk of suicidal thoughts in kids and teens. That right there highlights the urgent, desperate need for safer and more effective options.
And that's where TMS comes in. So how exactly does this technology work? What is it doing inside the brain? Let's take a closer look.
So TMS is a non-invasive procedure. As you can see from this diagram, it uses these really focused magnetic pulses to stimulate a very specific part of the brain. It's called the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, and it's basically a key hub in the brain's mood regulation circuits. Now, the standard treatment plan is pretty intensive. We're talking daily sessions, 5 days a week for about 6 to 8 weeks. Each of those sessions lasts somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes.
Okay, now we're getting to the heart of it. Let's really dig into the clinical trial data to understand just how effective TMS really is for adolescents.
To do this right, we're going to look at the evidence in a kind of hierarchy, starting with the strongest proof and working our way out. We'll kick things off with the gold standard, randomized controlled trials, or RCTs, where TMS is used alongside another treatment. Then we'll see what the trials say about TMS all by itself, look at some new accelerated protocols, and finally check out data from real-world clinics.
And here is the first crucial finding. When TMS is used as an adjunctive therapy, meaning you use it together with an antidepressant, the evidence is just really compelling. This chart pulls together results from 3 different major trials, and in every single one, the active TMS treatment was statistically way better than a sham procedure, which is kind of like a placebo for TMS. I mean, look at those response rates in the active TMS groups. They are remarkable, ranging from 89 all the way up to 98%.
But what about using TMS all by itself? Well, this is where the story gets a little more nuanced. A key study from 2021 found no significant statistical difference between active TMS and the sham procedure when TMS was used as a standalone therapy. What this really suggests is that the true power of TMS in adolescents might be that synergistic effect it has when it's combined with medication. Researchers are also trying to speed things up, testing what are called accelerated protocols that pack more sessions into a shorter time. A good example is the technique called intermittent theta burst stimulation, or ITBS. As this flowchart shows, these protocols can get a response incredibly fast. We're talking significant symptom improvement in just 48 hours, but the question of long-term durability is still up in the air. While there was still a difference at the 3-month follow-up, it wasn't statistically significant anymore.
Okay, let's move from the controlled environment of trials into the real world. This first number you see, 59.4%, is a big one. It comes from a large patient registry and represents the overall response rate among more than 1,000 adolescents who got TMS in a normal clinical setting.
And building on that, our next number is 30%. This is the percentage of those patients who achieved full remission. For almost a third of these teens, this means their symptoms of major depression were practically gone after treatment.
And finally, a really crucial safety number, less than 1%. This is the percentage of patients who said their symptoms actually got worse during the treatment. This really highlights just how favorable the safety profile is out in the real world.
So let's put it all together. This data from the Neuronetics Registry, which includes almost 1,200 adolescents, shows us a 59.4% response rate and a 30% remission rate. These are really promising figures that show TMS is definitely effective in the real world.
Now, you might notice these are a bit lower than the trial rates, and that's likely because you're dealing with a much more diverse and complex group of patients in everyday clinics compared to a highly controlled study.
So, we know it works. But efficacy is only one piece of the puzzle. Now we have to address the critical, practical questions. Is it safe? And can patients actually get it?
Well, the safety profile for TMS is very, very favorable. The most common side effects are pretty mild and they're localized. Things like some temporary discomfort on the scalp or maybe a slight headache. Serious events like seizures are incredibly rare. And this is a huge advantage over medications because TMS completely avoids all those systemic side effects like weight gain or sexual dysfunction.
And what about access? The FDA gave clearance through what's called its 510(k) pathway, which basically means they decided it was pretty much equivalent to devices already approved for adults. And that step was the key that opened the door for insurance coverage. As you can see, major providers like Humana, Aetna, and many of the Blue Cross Blue Shield plans are now covering TMS for adolescents. This is a massive step forward, even though some logistical hurdles like prior authorizations can still be an issue.
All right, we have covered a lot of ground. So let's bring it all home and distill everything down into the most important takeaways, and take a quick look at what's next for this really promising therapy.
But the work is far from over. Future research is absolutely critical. There are still big questions to answer. For example, can we optimize the treatment protocols specifically for the developing adolescent brain? How long do the positive effects really last? Can we find biomarkers to predict which patients will respond the best? And how do different TMS methods compare when you put them in a head-to-head trial?
So, after all that, what's the clinical take-home message? Let's break it down into 4 key points. First, this is a milestone clearance. The FDA's decision gives us a badly needed non-medication option for teens with major depression. Second, remember its adjunctive power. The strongest evidence we have shows that TMS works best when it's used with an antidepressant, where it has shown incredibly high response rates in trials. Third, a note of monotherapy caution. Its effectiveness as a standalone treatment is much less clear, so for now the recommendation is to combine it with medication. And finally, safety and access. TMS has a very good safety profile, and with insurance coverage expanding, it's becoming a much more realistic option for patients. The big question now is how this powerful new tool will be woven into clinical practice to truly change the future of adolescent mental health care.